Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Brent. I'm the host for Canadians with Disabilities and Allies. This afternoon, I will be having a guest on the show. I'm very welcome to bring in Chair Hubert van Niekerk. He's the Vice Chair for Every Canadian Counts. And he'll be speaking to us about the vision for a national disability insurance plan similar to the NDIS in Australia. So I'm just waiting for Hubert to arrive, and we will begin very shortly. There we go. Okay, London, Ontario. Here we are. Good afternoon.
Hey, how are you, Hubert?
Well, thank you. Good. Thank you so much for calling in. It's a great pleasure having you on the show this afternoon. It's always nice to have different kind of angles on things when it comes to different disability related topics. So what can you tell me what is the disability insurance plan? Like maybe kind of break down that and how that would be different between Canada and Australia.
Yeah, I was hoping. I think when I sent you a message that I'd be able to sort of spend a little bit of time at the beginning just to kind of read through what I have, and that'll answer almost all the questions if that's okay with you.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Take your time.
Probably 6-7 minutes, and I'll try to read reasonably quick. But I think it kind of needs to be all said for everybody to understand what we're trying to do here. So my background with disabilities, primarily being a special education specialist teacher in a high school, self-contained classroom for about 16 years, working with students with some of the most severe disabilities. And I retired about 5 years ago, and I just simply felt there was much more to do in the disabled world. So that's why I continue. So I'm also on the board of L'Arche London and the past chair of the Ontario Association for Developmental Education. So I joined ECC about 3 years ago. So I'm the vice chair, like you mentioned. And ECC was formed in 2014. In 2016 is when Dr. William Cowie, our executive director, met with leaders of the NDIS in Australia, and where Carla Qualtrough was also introduced to the idea of a national disability insurance plan. We believe Carla Qualtrough strongly supports this plan. But with the Accessibility Act, the National Disability Benefit Agenda, it has taken up a considerable amount of time. She recently spoke at what would be the next big challenge for disabilities in Canada. And at that time, I thought she was looking right at me saying, what we need next is a national disability insurance plan. That should be the next big challenge. And ECC is not competing for that little piece of pie. We just need a bigger pie that so many organizations are fighting for, and dividing up and screaming as loud as they can. That makes us different is that we want to see all groups unite under one plan. We don't support any particular plan, or any particular group. So a little bit of purpose, a request to the government to take initial steps in the creation of a publicly funded national disability insurance program that will strengthen the Canadian economy and advance the inclusion agenda by addressing the needs of the most marginalized groups in Canada, persons with disabilities. A little background, and I'm sure this is sort of preaching to the choir here, but persons with disabilities are the most marginalized group in Canadian society, experience the highest rates of unemployment and poverty. They are last item on most agendas. Regardless of province or territory, support services for persons with disabilities are underfunded, inadequate to task, as evident in the long waiting list for services in every area. The support system also suffer from inconsistent application of benefits, inflexibility in delivery, and are bureaucratically nightmarish to navigate, as testified by many Auditor General reports. The current support system for persons with disabilities are also massively inefficient due to fragmentation and lack of standards and inadequate data. Australia, whose disability support system were identical to Canada over a decade ago, addressed the problems comprehensively through the creation of this national disability plan. The impact of the program has been profound and deep there, increasing the GDP, generating employment for persons with disabilities, allowing mainly women to re-enter the workforce or education, and fostering innovation. The NDIS was created after a major research study by the Productivity Commission of the Ministry of Finance. Some considerations. The issue of inadequate supports for persons with disabilities is well understood and recognized by the disabled individuals and the families that require these services, but is not widely recognized by the public at large. The architecture and structure of the disability support system in Canada emerged in the 1970s and has remained the modus operandi ever since. This system is simply not suitable to the task. A new funding model is in order that meets demand and is sustainable and economically beneficial. Such a model exists in Australia with the NDIS, which was fully implemented in 2017. And we look for it to become a plan here. And we have on our website, we have a moving forward document that's accessible or is available for everybody to look into. So more research is needed. And of course, people with disabilities say, what, are you kidding? More research? We know what's needed already. So recently, every Canadian Council Coalition met with Minister Qualtrough to discuss the way forward in the desire to provide better disability supports in Canada. We emphasized that if we are to go forward, there would need to be more research to get to where we wanted to go. And I'd like to make it clear, because at that time too, when we posted something like this, there was that every Canadian counts and the people there must be on the payroll of the Liberals or something. I can assure you, all the people that are at this and are pushing this forward are absolutely volunteers, and we do this in our own time. So we want research into the feasibility, viability, and desirability of a national disability insurance plan. This is in recognition that such an idea is new to Canada, and no design to the plan, and there's no cost-benefit analysis in place for such a plan. There's no understanding of how federal-provincial interactions would occur under such a plan, and how it would affect existing disability insurance regimes, mainly privately held, nor would the criteria would not be included in such a plan, especially given the wide-reaching disparities in current provincial delivery systems. The question that need to be answered before launching this major plan, and by major, we're talking many billions of dollars. In Australia right now, their budget is $34 billion a year. The research will serve many purposes, not the least of which is engaging and familiarizing the wider Canadian public to the idea, an idea that we would all pay for, every wage earner. It would also allow us to change the discourse surrounding disabilities, because the plan will not be seen as welfare, but an investment in the people for the future. So the research is the initial first step. We got to do the research. So the closure of institutions was one of the greatest society or social policy changes in the 20th century, but the social and economic segregation that followed was atrocious. Closing doors is one thing, making fundamental changes to our policies and programs and changing the way we think is another. People with disabilities want to bring about a transformation of their lives. Younger disabled people don't want to live in long-term care homes, like our chair, Jonathan Marchand, who you may have heard of. He actually caged himself in front of the Quebec legislature because he didn't want to be in a long-term care home any longer. He'd been there for about 9 years. And eventually they started a pilot program for him, and he's been out for about a year. But he describes it as being on parole in a prison, because he could be pulled the plug and go back to prison anytime. So, but he's doing well. He's got his own place. He hires his own people. He has 189 hours a week of care that he needs, and he's working as well. They want things to be, just the disabled community wants what everybody else has and takes for granted. They want somewhere to live. They want a job if able, healthcare, good education, a chance to enjoy the company of family and friends, go to sports events and go to movies. They want a chance to participate meaningfully in the life of community. And I believe disabled are hopeful. They desire change, and they want others in the community to share that vision. They recognize that governments cannot work in isolation, and they want others to see the benefit of building more inclusive communities. For years, people with disabilities have been excluded, forgotten, and ignored. Disability voices have become louder, and they now demand to have their voices heard. With support, we can do this through a national disability insurance plan. The time is now to begin that process by government adopting our proposed resolution to conduct comprehensive research into the feasibility, desirability, and viability of a national public-funded disability insurance program. And we put this forward into the Liberal Convention of May of 2023. It's on the agenda. I don't know if we'll get time to be pushed through there, but we did get it on there into their token system. A national disability insurance plan would embody all long-term and chronic disabilities from cradle to grave. It would be paid for through deduction, wage deduction, just like employment insurance or CPP. And in Australia, it received unanimous support from all parties in Australia and received an 85% approval from a general public in a referendum. You know, I've got some whereases that we've flaunted to the Liberal government, Liberal Party, I'm sorry. But in the end, it says, be it resolved that the Liberal Party urge the Government of Canada to negotiate the provinces, territories, First Nations, and the Canadian public to design and operationalize a national disability insurance plan for Canada, as per the Australian example. Be it further resolved that pre-negotiations, a conference be held to address the basic features of the insurance plan, inclusive of potential costs and benefits as supported by the research. And that's kind of my panned story. So if I'd welcome any questions, concerns, pearls of wisdom at this time, for sure.
Yeah, thank you so much, Hubert. Very, very well presented speech.
Sorry, Brent, I was wondering if I could jump in. I was just wondering about when you say disability insurance plan, would that be kind of to fund a more national disability pension, or like you sort of thinking that it's just another benefit that can be deducted off paychecks that people pay into, and that at some point they get an honored pension? Like how does the two connect, I guess, is my question.
Yeah, I think sometimes the word the word insurance is a little confusing. But you know, employment insurance is also insurance. What it boils down to is that every wage earner gets, in Australia, it was about $350 a year on the average of every wage earner gets taken off their paycheck. This goes into a separate fund at arm's length from the government so that it can't be touched at the whim of a new government, just like Canada Pension Plan. So it's, if you need it, it's there for what you need, exactly what you need and when you need it. Very little waiting time. If you're born with a disability, you would get assessed as having a disability, and they would be assessed as to what degree of assistance you need. If you need modifications to your house, if you get an accident and you need modifications, those things are looked after completely, not crumbs, but it's assessed on what you need, and you get what you need instead of what's available.
Kind of like individual assessment needs.
So my question is, though, are you kind of envisioning this as a kind of a separate deduction, similar to like a CPP deduction that would come off of everyone's check, and then it would just get pooled, and then whoever needs it would dip into it at some point? Is that have I got that correct? Or?
You've got that correct.
Okay, good.
So that would be kind of like would that be like a separate one with what kind of what Minister Carla Quantrill, like a national disability program that she wants to eventually get out there, I guess, but that would be more of like an insurance one to kind of tag along with it. Would that be?
I think because this is all that kind of disability benefit is already kind of well under its way.
Yeah.
So what this would be is everything else that's left.
Oh, okay.
So I've always said poverty and disabilities are two very different things. They should be treated totally different.
Mm-hmm.
Poverty, you don't have to be disabled to be poverty.
Exactly.
To be in poverty. But this is geared, it's not kind of for short-term disability. A lot of people can get insurance for that. So this is geared for long-term chronic disabilities.
Yes.
So that it takes a big swoop. Like I said, in Australia, the budget this year is $34 billion. I suspect that in Canada, it would be $40 billion or more per year. Mm-hmm. It will take time to put in, and I know that, you know, that's something that's always scares people when you say it's going to take time. But the beauty of it is Australia has done it. And so we can learn exactly from them, you know, what they've done, how they've initiated. Two people that are on our advisory board actually were very instrumental in starting that in Australia.